Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished, multifaceted individual, an author who has traveled several times to India from San Diego, USA, Arielle Ford. Arielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you. Arielle is a love alchemist, a best-selling author, and a passionate guide for women ready to find love, keep love, and be love. She has led transformative workshops at Isalen Omega and the Chopra Center. She has 11 best-selling books, including The Soulmate Secret, Wabi Sabi Love, and Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate. And her debut novel is The Love Thief. So, Ariel, what an amazing journey you've had. But you began your career in a high-end PR role before becoming a love expert. What inspired this transformation from glamour to growth?
I if you had told me when I was younger that you're going to grow up to be a love expert, I would have laughed until I cried
Hmm.
because I was very much a behind the scenes person most of my life. I was a book publicist and a literary agent,
Hmm.
and I loved, launching people's careers, but I didn't plan to launch my own. But what happened was I was a first-time bride at the age of 44. And
Okay.
after I got married, every
Hmm.
single woman over 40 kept, wanting to take me to lunch. How did you do it? What did you do? And it soon became obvious that I
Hmm.
needed to write a book so I didn't have to keep going to lunch with these people and,
Hmm.
telling the same story over and over again. Well, the book, The Soulmate Secret, took off. It just like exploded. And it was published in, I think 21 languages in 40 countries. And all of a sudden, I'm getting calls from all these big conference centers and come teach a workshop and do. So I didn't plan it, but I was tired of doing PR anyway. And I love sharing stories about how to find love and keep love. And I decided to declare myself a student of love. So
Hmm.
while I was out teaching, I was also had this online, we didn't call them podcasts 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We called them webinars. I was
Hmm.
doing these webinars called the Art of Love.
Hmm.
And I interviewed the world's top experts on dating, marriage, and relationships. And then I would come home and I would try out everything that I learned. And that
Hmm.
eventually became more books about, finding the soulmate is kind of the easy part. Learning to
Hmm.
live with them, that's a
Correct.
whole other story.
Absolutely. What a great response. Thank you. You worked with spiritual legends like Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, and Wayne Dyer. How did these experiences shape your philosophy of love and life?
Well, I pretty much used to ask them all the same question
Hmm.
because I still to this day don't have the complete, like, figured it all out, but I always wanted to know, is life predestined or do we have free will?
Hmm.
And pretty much they'd all say, well, it's both depending on your level of consciousness and blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah, which was never a very satisfying answer.
Hmm.
But, I became very close friends with all of my clients. I still, Wayne has passed on, but I still talk to Marianne and Deepak on a regular basis. And so they became part of my life because the reason I wanted to represent people like that is because that's what my personal interest was. I
Hmm.
was trying to figure out, okay, here I am in a body, what the hell am I doing here? Like,
Hmm.
am I supposed to be here? And if I'm supposed to be here, what should I be doing? And, do I need to find a good psychic to get answers? Or am I already very psychic and do I need to learn discernment?
Hmm.
So it's just been about my own personal growth process. And I'm happy to say that at this late date in my life, I have figured out enough. I don't know it all. I can't really shape it for anybody else.
Yeah.
But for me personally,
Hmm.
I've decided that I'm going to spend the rest of my life receiving my destiny, whatever that
Hmm.
is. I've decided that there must be a destiny, and if it shows up, I'll just take the next correct baby steps and see what happens.
Fascinating. You also say that your life changed when you started following the breadcrumbs of joy. How do you recognize when the universe is guiding you?
Well, I would have to say it's easier to recognize when I'm making a mess of things,
Hmm.
right? You
Absolutely.
know, so it's just, if something's coming up and I don't like it, I sort of just sit down and go, okay, there's a pony in here somewhere. You know that old little story about the little boy
Hmm.
who wants a pony for his
Yeah.
birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and he walks into the barn and it's filled with horse shit everywhere, and he
Mm-hmm.
gets excited. If
Mm-hmm.
there's this much poo on the ground, there must be a pony in here somewhere. So I
Mm-hmm.
start looking for the pony. What's the
Mm-hmm.
pony?
How
And then I
nice.
realize that the thing that I have all the control over is how I'm going to respond to circumstances.
Hmm.
Like when we had the pandemic, there wasn't really much I could do about it. I was very unhappy about the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
because at that point in my life, I was getting on airplanes, going out and speaking, interacting with lots of people. And now I'm stuck at home. Here in San Diego, they actually put yellow caution tape on the beaches. They wouldn't even let us walk on the beach for the first
Wow.
month, which is
Hmm.
crazy because there
Hmm.
couldn't be a better place to go.
Yeah.
So, understanding that while I can't control what happens, I do have all this other control of what story am I going to make up about it? How can I
Hmm.
turn these lemons into lemonade?
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. You call yourself a love alchemist. What transformation do you help people experience?
Well, one of the reason I wrote my novel, The Love Thief,
Hmm.
is actually the answer to that because the theme of the book is really about what is love and what is not love. And what I have come to really understand, especially once I declared myself a student of love, is that most people, at least in the West, have love all wrong. They
Hmm.
think love is first and foremost a feeling, and they base whether or not they're going to act on love is if they're feeling the feelings of being in love. Now, the state of being in love is
Hmm.
nature's greatest drug high. It is
Hmm.
your brain on drugs. It's your brain on oxytocin and adrenaline and dopamine and
Hmm.
hormones I can't even pronounce. And it
Hmm.
is fun and it feels great.
Yeah.
But you're doing this with a stranger. You don't
Hmm.
even know this person, right? And while you're in this drug-induced high, there may be red flags popping up all over the place about
Hmm.
their bad behavior or the lies they tell. But because you don't want to let go of
Hmm.
this great drug high,
Yeah.
you step over it. Then you take sacred vows and you marry them. And then you wake up one day and go, oh my God, what have I done?
Hmm.
So my understanding is that what love really is a behavior, and it's a choice, and it's an action,
Yeah.
and it's a way of being, and it's a decision. And even if you're married to your soulmate life partner who's the greatest thing since sliced bread, there will be days when you hate them,
Hmm.
and it doesn't mean that you don't love them. So part of my mission has been is to get people to understand that if you're going to make a lifelong commitment to another human,
Hmm.
take a lot of time to get to know them. Do you
Correct.
have shared values,
Yeah.
right? Do you have a
Hmm.
shared vision for the future?
Hmm.
Have you really talked things through?
Hmm.
So, I would say more than anything, sharing, discovering for myself what love is, and then being able to share that really lights me up.
Fascinating. You also say that the Beatles line, all you need is love, is a big lie.
It is a big fat lie. And it's one of the biggest lies. All you need
Absolutely.
is love. Da, 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 da. And that's what we're talking about. It's
Absolutely.
not enough,
Hmm.
because you could be having these feelings of being loved, which, by the way, I like to call that state the socially acceptable form of insanity,
Correct.
right? So you're having all these great feelings. It's like
Mm,
champagne bubbles are running through your veins, and it just feels so good. But at the end of the day, if you want kids, they don't want kids. You need a certain amount of money to have an enjoyable life. They just want to, smoke pot all day and or whatever, and they don't want to work.
mm,
Love is not enough
mm,
to sustain a life. So while it's a sweet song and it's easy to remember,
mm.
I believe it's a big fat lie.
So then what in your view is needed to sustain a relationship?
Well, they've actually done a lot of research on that. And first of all, the first thing you have to do is choose wisely.
Mm,
Like really like vet this person and not just by yourself. Make
mm,
sure your friends and your family have spent time with them.
mm,
Really spend some time like digging in and don't move too fast,
mm,
right? So you need that, but then you also have to not only feel like you love them, but that you like them
mm,
and that you respect them and that
mm.
they respect you.
Yeah.
Because all human beings pretty much want the same thing. We all want to be loved and appreciated for exactly who we are. So that means, everybody's going to come with baggage,
Mm,
right? Everybody's going to come with annoying habits.
mm,
And, are you going to be a big enough person to say, listen, I don't like it when you do X, Y, Z. But if
mm,
if you can't change, I'm going to find a way to love you as much as possible
mm.
in spite of that. And one of the books I wrote, which is called Wabi Sabi Love,
Yeah.
is all about how to do this. Wabi
Mm,
Sabi is the ancient Japanese aesthetic that
mhm,
seeks to find beauty and
mhm,
perfection and
mm,
imperfection.
mm,
So since we're all imperfect beings,
mm.
we have to figure out how to love our own imperfections and love those of those around us.
Fascinating. And you've just debuted as a novelist with your book, The Love Thief. What does this new chapter teach you about reinvention and trusting divine timing?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, here's what happened. I never, ever had it on my to-do list to write fiction. I'd
Okay.
already written 11 nonfiction books, and I didn't even once entertain the thought, never showed up.
Mm,
And then one day, this this story started to roll in my head like a movie. I was
mm,
able to see it. And then lines from the book started to download. And I was like, no,
mm,
go away. Whatever you are, go away. I
mm,
don't know how to write fiction. I don't want to write fiction. In fact, I don't really feel like writing right now. Isn't
mm.
11 books enough?
Yeah.
The story persisted and persisted. And then one day, I got an email from a company called masterclass.com,
Hmm.
and they were offering a course with Dan Brown, the author of The Da
Yeah.
Vinci Code, who's my
Mm,
favorite author.
mm,
And I thought, oh, well, I'm a member of Masterclass. Let me just take the Dan Brown course. So I sign up for it, and I get to episode number 3. And episode number 3 is location as a character in the book.
mm.
And I was mesmerized because the movie in my head was showing me that most of this story takes place in Rishikesh, India.
Wow. Mm,
So in that moment, I thought, well, maybe Dan Brown is right. But if he's right, I need to go to Rishikesh to do more research. I'd been there a couple of times, went to some arti ceremonies. I have a friend who runs an ashram there, but I'd never walked Rishikesh as if I needed to describe it,
mm,
the sights, the sounds, the smells, how
mm,
the color of the Ganges, you know.
mm.
And then I thought, well, if I'm going to fly 21 hours from San Diego, I'm going to need a business class ticket.
Yeah.
I'm 5'8". I can't sit and coach.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, right now it was during the pandemic. I thought I don't have an extra $7,000, $8,000. So I decided to talk to God, and I said, listen, God, I don't want to write this book.
Mm,
But if it's my destiny to write this book, I
mm,
need to manifest a business class ticket to India.
mm,
And I like felt this great relief. Ugh, that's never going to happen. 48 hours later, I had the ticket in my hand and I went to
Oh,
Rishikesh.
wonderful.
And everything I saw in my head, the pictures
Hmm.
in my head, I tripped over. It was
Hmm.
all there. I just needed to take notes. So that
Hmm.
was the beginning of a 5.5 year journey into writing this book.
Hmm.
And now that it's over, I'm glad that I did it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done and the thing I'm probably most proud of.
Hmm. And you speak fondly of India. Before we started recording, you were telling me you've been here many times. And your story, your debut novel is based in Rishikesh and in India. My question, Ariel, is how has India shaped your personal and creative life?
Wow, that's a great question. I've been to India 8 times since 1997.
Hmm.
And every time I go, I feel like I can breathe deeper. I feel like this is where I came from, that
Hmm.
I am now home. And I feel free in a way that I've never felt before. And I always tell people, my least favorite place on earth is Disneyland. If you
Hmm.
want to torture me, send me to artificial Disneyland.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
hate that place. But if you want to enchant me, I can stand on a street corner in Delhi or Bangalore or, you know, Jaipur for
Hmm.
5 hours and just watch life go by. The
Yeah.
colors, the sound, the just the vibe of the people. Is just enchanting to me.
Hmm.
So for me, life just goes full color, and then I see colors I've never seen before when I'm in India. I
Hmm.
love your country. I
Hmm.
love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, your book combines heartbreak, healing, and karma. What inspired you to turn this deeply emotional subject into your novel?
Well, like I said, the story came to me and it was inside of me, kicking and screaming to come out.
Hmm.
And I think part of it was the villain in the book is based on somebody I once knew who
Hmm.
was a sociopath and a toxic narcissist. And I also, at the same time, had four girlfriends who are very smart. Most of them are pretty famous, not the kind of people you'd think would get involved with a toxic narcissist, and yet they did. And so, as they were extricating themselves from these very bad relationships, I spent a lot of time on the phone hearing the downloads of all the horror they were going through and all the heartbreak, because it turns out that betrayal is the hardest emotion to recover from
Hmm.
because you've spent all this time with somebody that you're deeply in love with and care about, and you believed
Hmm.
that they were equal to how they felt about you.
Hmm.
And then one day the rug gets pulled out from under you and you discover it was all a
Hmm.
lie.
Hmm.
And in fact, one of the main characters in the book owns a spiritual bookstore in Rishikesh. And he becomes a mentor, or what I refer to him as a love walla
Hmm.
to my protagonist.
Hmm.
And at one point, after he's heard her whole miserable story multiple times, she says to him, "But did he ever love me?"
Hmm.
And the love walla looks at her and says, "A man like this is not capable of love.
Hmm.
Asking a man like this to love you is like asking a man with no arms to hold you.
Wow.
Simply impossible."
Hmm.
So the book is about heartbreak, but it's also about transformation and
Hmm.
transformation on multiple levels, not just letting go of the heartbreak and getting to forgiveness and all of that. But there's also a scene in the book where she is floating in the Ganges
Hmm.
and asking Ma Ganga to release her from her pain. And
Hmm.
she has this what some might call an enlightenment experience where she's just filled with love and light and healing and knowing that she's going to be okay. And so one of my favorite Sanskrit words is santosha, which
Hmm.
is not a word that's known here in this country,
Yeah.
but it's about, utter contentment. In fact, here on my desk, I have I don't know if you can see it. No, you probably can't. It says
Mm.
Santosha.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, utter
Yeah.
contentment on it
Yeah.
as a
Mm.
constant reminder, because most people think that the goal of life is to be happy.
Mm.
And I say happiness isn't enough
Correct.
because happy is based on people, places, circumstances, and
Yeah.
experiences. So
Mm.
I'm happy because you and I are having a gourmet dinner.
Mm.
2 hours later, I'm miserable because I now have food poisoning.
Mm.
So it's very conditional. But with Santosha, you get to this state of just utter contentment
Correct.
despite how life is knocking you one way or the other, because
Mm.
life will always knock us one
Mm.
way or the other. But
Mm.
when you can be rooted in Santosha, that to me is what I always try to shoot for.
Amazing. Amazing. Your novel also explores letting go of life that we thought and we wanted. How does surrender become a superpower in love?
Yeah, so for anybody who's been in a long-term relationship or married, you've learned by now that you can't change anybody, right?
Absolutely.
This
Mm.
is what you got. You can learn to tolerate, you can learn to manipulate, but who they are at their essence isn't going to change. So when you can surrender into yes, on the one hand, I love this person because, on
Mm.
the other hand, they're totally annoying because, and can I just love them warts and all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and
Mm.
just surrender to the experience of, thank God I have a partner that I can trust,
Yeah.
that I can respect, who respects me, who has my back, who's my
Mm.
biggest cheerleader. And
Mm.
you just keep reminding yourself, yes, there are going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. And aren't I the lucky one to
Mm.
have this person to be a witness to my life,
Mm.
to walk through life with?
Mm. What a great response. A few more questions for you, Ariel. Several of your characters are based on real people. Did you face any ethical or emotional challenges when you were creating these characters in your book?
So I did a really good job
Mm.
of covering everything up so that there's no way there's any exposure.
Mm.
I changed names, I changed the color of their skin. I changed what they did for a living. And in the
Mm.
beginning of the book, it says, this book is based on actual experiences,
Mm.
but names have been changed
Yeah.
to protect both the
Mm.
guilty and the innocent.
Correct. 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 I have two more questions for you. You've described mystical moments that guided your writing in Rishikesh. Can you share one that felt specially fated or magical?
Yeah, so when I was in Rishikesh, I was walking through the Tapavan, the main little part of the town.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I see people walking around with these red strings on
Yeah.
their wrists that there's
Yeah.
some kind of blessing. And
Mm.
I thought to myself, God, I would really like to have a red string blessing.
Mm.
And then I turned around and there was a man dressed up as Hanuman,
Mm.
and he looked at me and he said, Madam, may I tie a red string around your wrist and give you a blessing?
Mm.
Just
Amazing.
like that. I had the
Amazing.
thought, and there he was. And I was so enchanted that it was instant manifestation. And then the other thing that happened, you probably know this, but
Mm.
Rishikesh is a vegan city, a
Yeah.
vegetarian city. There's
Yeah.
no alcohol, there's no meat, and there are no eggs.
Mm.
Now, I like to eat eggs for breakfast.
Mm.
And I mean, not that I don't really like dosas. Oh my God.
Mm.
Don't get me started about how much I love dosas, but
Yeah.
I was just sort of craving eggs.
Mm.
And and I was walking through this one section of town and I was thinking to myself, God, if only I could have some scrambled eggs. And I
Mm.
must have said it out loud because the woman behind me said, I'll tell you what cafe to go to.
Mm.
They have what did you call them? Black market eggs. And I got
Mm.
eggs for breakfast. So things like it was like
Yeah.
instant
Yeah. Yeah.
gratification,
Yeah. Yeah.
instant karma. And the
Mm,
other thing that I noticed when I was there was that I felt deeply connected to my ancestors on the other side.
mm,
They sometimes talk to me in my dreams, but as I was walking down the streets or walking through woods and stuff, I could actually hear them. It doesn't happen here in San
mm,
Diego,
mm.
but it was happening in Rishikesh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And my last question for you, Ariel. After this spiritual romance thriller, any more books on the horizon that may complete this circle of travel for you from India to maybe other cities?
I don't know, and I haven't been thinking about it.
Mm,
I figure I pretty much have decided that if another story comes to me like this one did, it like a
mm,
movie in my head where I can really see it
mm,
and then transcribe it, then the answer would be yes. If somebody said to me, okay, you need to sit down and start writing a novel, it's like, you can't make me.
mm. Well said. And on that note, Ariel, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been with you. I've lived in India, I've lived all over the world, and I've often said about my own country that people either love my country or they hate my country. I've never met a single person who says it was okay. You're clearly in the first section who's love my country. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own incredible journey. Thank you for speaking to me about all the work that you've been doing, about the love guru that you are, and about your book, The Love Thief. Thank
Oh,
you
well, thank
again, and
you.
good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.